That means that, first of all, we have common responsibilities. We're all in the same boat. We're all living on this earth. Climate is impacting everybody, and we're all producing emissions. At the same time, some of us have produced emissions for a long time during industrialization, historical emissions. Others will be producing a lot more in their future industrialization. So we have to work this out, and we have to find a balance. And that's what the common but differentiated responsibilities means, that each country, each region of the world will have different responsibilities. The negotiations is all about how to figure out this balance. What is the difference and how much different? First of all, let's talk about the formal negotiations process, what ended up in Barcelona last week. I wouldn't call it an impasse. What has happened there is there has been a tremendous amount of progress on the basic issues. A lot of hard work was done on texts and ideas, but what they have not managed to achieve was come to agreement on what you could call the core political issues. And the core political issues are not that many, but without solution to those, it's not possible to finalize the details. Now, these core political issues are the mitigation targets, ambitious mitigation targets for the developed countries, mitigation arrangements for the developing countries, and financing for both adaptation and mitigations. So those are big issues, and those are issues that the negotiators themselves have difficulty achieving agreement on. These are issues that are heads of state, heads of government issues, because they have impacts on the whole economy. Once those are figured out, then the rest of the negotiations will be able to succeed. First of all, the Secretary General has not scaled back ambitions. In fact, it's the other way. He has publicly said repeatedly that we're raising the level of ambition, raising the bar as high as possible. But what we need to focus on is the content. The Bali Action Plan, that is the basis of the negotiations, did not specifically call for a legally binding treaty. It called for an agreement. So we need to get that agreement, the content of that agreement. Many countries, most countries, would want a legally binding treaty, package the content into a legally binding treaty. That is very unlikely that we'll be able to finish that job by December, but we will need to finish that job as soon as possible afterwards, whether it will take 6 months or whatever it will take, as soon as possible. But now we need to focus on the content, and we need to raise the level of ambition for the content as high as possible. What the science is telling us, that we need to reduce our emissions urgently because the global emissions must peak by about 2050. That's only 5 years from now. So there has to be short-term action. Of course, what we need ultimately is long-term reductions of emission by all countries. And that's why they talk about 80% reduction by 2050, these kinds of numbers, 50% globally, and so on and so forth. But what matters also is the path. The longer we wait, the more we'll have to reduce later, and the faster we have to do that reduction. That is why the focus is on the short-term action. So whatever long-term agreements we make by 2050, that's all fine, but they have to be balanced and they have to be made credible by short-term actions. And that's why it's so important that in Copenhagen we agree on short-term actions by all countries. Maybe we can look at them just two different things. There's youth and there's civil society, and there's of course some civil society groups that are engaged in terms of the youth, but youth is the future, and they will inherit the world that we are now putting in place. So for them, it's a particular challenge to stand up and say, we want a world that we can handle. And at the same time, they are the hope and the real opportunity for the future, because if they start thinking about these issues early enough, they will not create the same kind of problems, the same kind of world that we and our fathers have created. So youth is very special in this, and therefore education, training of the youth, getting more information cannot be more crucial. Civil society, on the other hand, including youth-based civil societies, is the way to pressure the governments, because governments are going to agree to whatever pressure they feel by their constituencies. They will not agree on anything, and therefore it's extremely important that in the weeks that we have left to Copenhagen, that civil society does its best to pressure the governments to get absolutely the most ambitious deal that we can possibly get.